It began as a single announcement, but it landed like an economic shockwave. Donald Trump declared that any country doing business with Iran could face a sweeping 25% tariff from the United States. Not just Iran, not just rivals, everyone. In one stroke, a policy aimed at pressure threatened the global trading system. This wasn't a traditional sanction. Sanctions target banks or individuals. Tariffs punish entire economies. They hit supply chains, consumers, and allies at once. What was once a technical tool is now a blunt geopolitical weapon. Markets didn't react because of Iran. They reacted because the rules felt unstable. Even now, there is no signed executive order, no clear enforcement mechanism, and no defined exemptions. Yet diplomats are scrambling, trade partners are reassessing risk, and investors are pricing in damage before anything is implemented. So the real question isn't whether Iran is the target. It's whether this marks a shift toward tariffs as instruments of raw power, where uncertainty itself becomes strategy, with consequences far beyond this moment. The policy itself was deceptively simple. A blanket 25% tariff would be imposed on any country that continues to trade with Iran, regardless of volume, sector, or intent. Energy, manufacturing, food, technology, it all falls under the same threat. This was not a targeted strike. It was a net cast over the entire global economy. Many initially dismissed it as just another sanction headline. But sanctions isolate specific actors. Tariffs redistribute pain. They raise costs, disrupt contracts, and punish allies, rivals, and neutral states in exactly the same way. That distinction is why markets didn't shrug this off. Within hours, traders weren't debating Iran's economy. They were questioning supply chains, pricing models, and political reliability. Governments signaled concern quietly, not because the tariff was active, but because its scope was undefined. As of now, there is still no formal framework, no list of exemptions, and no timeline. Investors understand something critical here. When trade policy becomes unpredictable, risk multiplies faster than tariffs ever could. The shock wasn't about 25%, it was about precedent. And once precedent changes, markets assume the weapon will be used again. That uncertainty, not enforcement, is why this announcement instantly felt systemic, dangerous, and far larger than a single country or dispute alone today. For decades, sanctions followed a familiar logic. Freeze bank accounts, block transactions, isolate leaders, institutions, or specific industries. They were legal instruments, slow-moving, technical, and designed to pressure regimes while minimizing collateral damage. At least that was the theory. Tariffs are different. They don't target behavior, they target trade itself. When tariffs are imposed, prices rise instantly, supply chains fracture, and inflation spreads outward like shockwaves. What once lived in legal filings now shows up at ports, factories, and grocery shelves. This is where the evolution becomes dangerous. Sanctions sit within international frameworks. Tariffs sit within domestic politics. One is negotiated quietly, the other is announced loudly. And when tariffs are weaponized, economic policy stops being about efficiency and becomes about leverage. The deeper shift is psychological. Sanctions tell markets a rule has been broken. Tariffs tell markets rules can change. Past tools aimed pressure upward toward governments. This tool pushes pressure downward onto entire economies, workers, and consumers who had no role in the decision at all. That's why this move feels less like diplomacy and more like coercion. The line between economic management and power projection has blurred. And once that line disappears, the most important question is no longer legal. It's practical. Who actually absorbs the first blow when this weapon is raised? To understand who gets hit first, you have to look past Iran. The real center of gravity is China. It is Iran's largest trading partner and the backbone of global manufacturing. Energy flows from Iran. Finished goods flow from China. This tariff threatens both ends at once. For years, the United States and China have existed in an uneasy pause. Tariffs were lowered. Talks resumed. Markets priced in stability, not friendship, but predictability. This announcement shattered that assumption overnight. Because even if enforcement never comes, the message is clear. Any trade relationship can become leverage. Any supply chain can become a bargaining chip. For China, this reintroduces a familiar risk. Trade war dynamics don't need escalation. They only need uncertainty. Here, Iran functions as the lever. China is the load. Pressure applied in one place transfers instantly to another. Manufacturers rethink sourcing. Investors hedge exposure. Diplomats calculate retaliation scenarios before policy is even written. This is why markets reacted globally, not regionally. They recognized the pattern. When the world's two largest economies drift back toward confrontation, the fallout never stays contained. And China is only the beginning of that story. When the announcement landed, America's allies understood immediately that this wasn't theoretical. Europe, India, Turkey, and Japan suddenly faced the same dilemma: preserve access to U.S. markets or continue vital trade relationships tied to energy, geography, and long-term strategy. There was no middle ground offered. For decades, alliances were built on an assumption: security cooperation meant economic predictability. Military partnerships implied trade stability. This policy challenges that belief directly. It treats allies and adversaries with identical pressure, reducing diplomacy to a single economic lever. European governments worry about energy exposure. India weighs regional stability against export risk. Turkey balances geography against retaliation. Japan, deeply integrated into global supply chains, sees disruption where trust once existed. None of these actors caused the crisis, yet all are asked to absorb its cost. That is the emotional core of this move. When allies are punished preemptively, loyalty becomes transactional. Cooperation turns conditional. Quiet resentment replaces public unity. This is why diplomatic unease spread faster than market panic. The question echoing through capitals isn't about Iran, it's about reliability. If partnership offers no insulation from economic punishment, then alliances themselves become fragile instruments. And that fragility leads directly to the next problem: enforcement. That question sets the stage for legal limits, political resistance, and economic consequences now colliding in real time globally today ahead. Almost immediately, lawyers and economists ask the same question: can this actually be enforced? As of now, there is no signed executive order, no published rulebook, and no clear list of exemptions. Humanitarian goods, energy imports, and secondary suppliers all exist in legal gray space. The political messaging projects strength. The legal structure does not. Tariff authority remains contested, courts are already reviewing similar powers, and Congress retains leverage it may choose to use. Every layer adds friction. Every challenge slows implementation. Even enforcement invites retaliation. Targeted countries can respond with their own tariffs, regulatory barriers, or currency tools. That risk alone discourages clarity, because clarity invites confrontation. Meanwhile, the economic impact would not stay abroad. Tariffs raise import costs, and those costs travel quickly. Manufacturers pay more. Retailers pass prices forward. Consumers absorb inflation. Supply chains, already strained, face another shock. This is why uncertainty is doing the work of policy right now. Markets don't need enforcement to react. They only need possibility. And as long as the rules remain undefined, businesses prepare for disruption rather than growth. That brings this story fully into the present moment. Until details emerge, hesitation becomes rational, investment freezes, and the cost of uncertainty quietly compounds across economies already navigating fragile recoveries worldwide as policymakers delay decisions and markets wait nervously for clarity. Right now, the story is defined less by action and more by hesitation. Governments have pushed back diplomatically but cautiously. Statements from Europe, Asia, and emerging markets share the same tone: concern without confrontation. No one wants to escalate a policy that is not yet fully materialized. What matters most is what has not happened. There is still no signed executive order, no enforcement timeline, no clarity on exemptions for energy, medicine, or indirect trade routed through third countries. Behind closed doors, trade ministries are modeling scenarios rather than responding to facts. This uncertainty is not accidental. In modern geopolitics, ambiguity itself can be leverage. By leaving the rules undefined, pressure is applied without cost, and reactions are measured without commitment. Markets sense this immediately. Businesses delay investment. Shipping contracts are rewritten. Risk premiums quietly rise. Every day without clarification compounds the effect, not because tariffs are active, but because trust is suspended, and that may be the most powerful signal of all. If global trade depends on predictability, what happens when unpredictability becomes policy? That question now hangs over boardrooms, capitals, ports, and markets worldwide, shaping decisions quietly, daily, before any law is written or enforced by leaders everywhere. To understand the bigger picture, step back from Iran, China, or any single tariff. This is about power. Tariffs here are not economic adjustments. They are signals. They communicate who sets terms, who absorbs risk, and who adapts. For most of the post-World War II era, global trade rested on rules. Institutions, agreements, and predictability reduced conflict by making costs visible and shared. Disputes existed, but escalation followed procedures. That system assumed restraint. What we are seeing now is different. Unilateral pressure replaces negotiation. Ambiguity replaces process. Trade becomes an extension of state power rather than a neutral exchange mechanism. When tariffs are used this way, precedent matters more than percentages. Once established, this tool does not disappear. It invites imitation. If one country can weaponize access, others will respond in kind. The result is not isolation, but fragmentation. Supply chains shorten, trust narrows, efficiency gives way to security. The haunting question is not about this policy alone. It is about the future architecture of global trade. If every country becomes a potential target, cooperation becomes conditional, and when conditionality dominates, the system stops optimizing and starts hardening. The world doesn't collapse overnight. It slowly fractures, one decision at a time. That trajectory defines the stakes, because once trust erodes, rebuilding it requires decades, not summits, slogans, or temporary pauses in economic confrontation between major powers worldwide and allies. Short YouTube description, high-ranked and clean. A single tariff announcement just shook the global economy. In this video, we break down Trump's 25% tariff threat on countries trading with Iran, and why it's about far more than sanctions. From China and U.S. allies to global markets and trade rules, this move could reshape power, precedent, and the future of global trade. Disclaimer: this video is produced solely for educational and informational purposes. The on-screen presenter and narration are created using AI technology and portray a fictional character. They do not represent, imitate, or depict any real person, public figure, or official authority. The analysis and commentary are independent interpretations based on publicly available news and information. Any ideas, viewpoints, or theories discussed are presented in a general, explanatory context and should not be attributed to any individual or organization.